Bon dia a tothom. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for inviting us here today to speak and to share what are our views about what has happened in 2023, and particularly what we expect for 2024. 2023 has not been, I would say, very interesting year in terms of investment worldwide. Joël, what do you think?
Well, yeah, it has been a challenging year. There has been quite a number of transactions. I think we heard it today. It remains stable. I think with regards to the early stage investments, in 2022, we had two big investments, two large transactions that kind of distorted a bit the evolution of the investment pace here in Catalonia. And essentially, I would say these were outliers. So if we look at the early stage investments done in 2023 compared to 2022 and 2021, I think they actually have remained stable. We just had a couple of outliers that distorted the investment pace, and particularly very large transactions. And I do think that these large transactions will happen again. Time will tell, but they will happen again, I'm pretty sure, in the next year or year and a half.
Let's start. We will revisit that part again. Let's start with what we have been hearing this morning here. So we've seen Robert Fabregat, director of Biocat, presenting, I would say, what is amazing data in the Catalan life science ecosystem. Despite the investments, we will go back there later. I think that we've seen an ecosystem that, in my view, is really consolidating, not only because global corporations have chosen Barcelona and Catalonia to establish some of their teams here, which are not anymore only clinical trials and commercial, which is super good to have them, but is also R&D and other types of, I would say, innovation and other types of talent coming, landing, and establishing in Barcelona and around Barcelona. So I think that's one of the most important things we have heard today, something that is being consolidated. That's directed with the increasing numbers of direct investment, meaning these corporates and companies that are already originally from Catalonia, investing more and more in facilities, in personnel, in teams here. And also the number of companies that have been created in the life science ecosystem every year keeps on increasing and stabilizing, with some, like digital health and other aspects, that have been also picking up and really giving and showing some interesting numbers, as Robert and you can read also in the report. So we've heard also this morning that Barcelona and Catalonia are very well positioned to attract talent, and that some of this talent, in contrary to other sectors, are women. So I think that it's also something we have to congratulate us on. So in general, I think that what we've been hearing is that the Catalan ecosystem in life science is not only consolidated, but also an important key tractor for the economy and for the impact it has in the society. And of course, as we were saying, one of the pieces of this is also investment. If Catalonia has decided to become part of these key global players in life sciences, we have to do that also in investing. And this is exactly what we want to also discuss this morning.
Yeah, no, if I remember when I came here, that was in 2007, I mean, it has changed dramatically. I mean, today we hear in the news pretty much every day, I would say, something about biotech. So going back to your point, it's consolidating. I think it's definitely consolidated. The picture now versus 10, 15 years ago is absolutely, has nothing to do one with the other.
Correct. So still growing. Consolidation doesn't mean we don't have to grow, or there are not signs of growing. So the signs of growing are absolutely there. And as a consolidated system, we are exposed to what happens around the world. And this year, as we were saying, for venture capital investments, not only in life science in general, but particularly in life sciences and some pieces of technology. Investment has not been, I mean, I don't think investors think that 2023 has been a good year in this sense. So these investments have decreased substantially. It's 20 million in 2023 compared to 2024, where we were seeing 445 million, so 445 million euros invested in the Catalan region. That's not only venture capital, that includes grants and other types of investment, as Robert Fabregat was explaining earlier, but this number is there. But the beauty, as Joël was saying, is that we have been able to maintain the numbers we had been seeing in the 3 consecutive previous years, more or less, 2020, 2021, and the previous ones. And you were saying, Joël, and I fully agree, that's probably caused with some of these outliers that we would like to have more often, probably, right?
Yes. No, I mean, again, there were 2 transactions in 2022 that really made the numbers really skyrocket. And but these sort of transactions are correlated with the maturity of the sector. So once certain companies here get to the next level and attract international capital, the ticket sizes of international capital is large. So that leads inevitably to large financing rounds. And we don't need to look at this as on a year-by-year basis. We need to look at this holistically with a bird's eye view to really understand, okay, how is the trend, how is the maturity of the system, and there will be more large transactions. There's a lot of companies now that have been financed, seed finance, Series A. These companies will need larger pools of capital very soon, and this will come, if they're attractive enough for investors, including international investors, this again will lead to large transactions.
I fully agree. I remember being here and this presentation of this report a few years ago, and we were betting about which was the highest number the Catalan ecosystem could achieve, no? And I think that at a certain point we mentioned 500 million, and everybody was saying, oh, that's not going to happen. Last year we had 45, so almost there. Let's see what 2024 and particularly the future years deserves to us. But let's get a little bit into that. So we would like also, and we've been discussing a lot with Joël when preparing this session, about how this correlates with what has happened globally, particularly in the US and all across Europe. And 2023 has not been a good year in life sciences for many reasons. First of all, we've seen a decrease, and in the first months of the year, nothing related to M&A internationally. So when we take a look to the top 10 M&A transactions in the biopharma space in 2023, these 10 big deals have happened mostly in the second half of the year. And the first one, an acquisition by Pfizer Oxygen, happened in March. So January, February was nothing, absolutely, or very few. And then in July, some reactivations, but almost everything happened in Q4 of 2023. Which in one side, it's bad, because that scared a lot the investors, the LPs, which are the investors that invest in investment firms. That scared everyone a little bit. This combined to what we were seeing in the public markets was a kind of an amazing, it was the perfect storm, right? So investors having many other places where to put their money, because there were inflation, increase of the rates. There were many options that had not been there for many years. And on top of that, we were seeing no IPOs, companies being public, really having a market position much below what their sum of cash and assets had. So it was the first part of the year, a kind of correction in valuations and correction of the hype post-COVID, that we were still a bit of hanged there. While the second part of the year was not only correction, it was a bit cruel with the life science companies, particularly how this went down to fundamentals. So again, some companies really having values which were much below what we're having.
I actually have digged a bit on a couple of numbers here, and you listen about this because it's really, there's going to be a lot of M&A activity next year, a lot. And here's a few figures.
You mean 2024?
In 2024, a few figures. There's an unprecedented increase of the interest rates that has not been seen in the last 4 decades by the Federal Reserve. This has implied a steep decline in innovation-driven industry. If you look at the number of companies today that are quoted, to your point, Clara, that are quoted in NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange, 20% of the companies are trading below cash. 20% of the companies are trading below the cash they have in the bank. Now, there is, from now until 2030, there is 300 billion sales at risk because this huge patent cliff, this is circumstantial, 300 billion sales at risk by the pharmaceutical industry, okay? On the other hand, you have the top 15, top 16 pharmas. If you amount the cash they have, it's over 500 billion. They have cash available to transact. Okay, so there is 300 billion at risk, 500 billion available of pharmas. 20% of the companies, many of them have fundamentals, trading below cash. And if you consider that the pharma companies, 65% of the drugs today come from externally sourced assets, meaning by M&A or pharma. So all of this conundrum leads to what? Pharmas need to replenish their sales at risk. They have plenty of cash. There's a lot of opportunities of undervalued companies, and there will be a lot of M&A going on. Now, this M&A will probably be more clinical stage, correct? I mean, this is what they're looking for. But the M&A activity will help the sentiment of the sector as well. And if we consider that already, the lowering the interest rates is factored in the markets, that's why we have seen this last quarter a steep increase in the valuations. This is all going to improve in 2024. Fully
agree. In fact, if we take a look at the numbers, in the these top 10 deals we were referring to, summed up $116 billion in transactions. And that's more or less double of what we have seen in the previous 3 years in a yearly basis. So I think that the numbers we are going to envisage, as Joël was saying, in 2024 are super, super good. Let's see. In medtech, things has not still starting recovering. I think the medtech scenario is a bit different. So 2021 was, again, as well as in biopharma and other segments within life sciences, a very good year for medtech. But that was a particularly good year. So the number of transactions in the values and the amounts of these transactions were huge. So at least at this point in 2023, we have not still, at the very end of the year, seen this increase in M&A. Let's see what happens in 2024. But there is a lot of internal redistribution of activities, rethinking about some of the deals and some of the therapeutic areas. So let's see what we are going to see for medtech. But I believe that as soon as these great corporates consolidate and decide which is their next step, they're going to be eager to also take advantage of the current market and doing so.
We were debating amongst us, what are the top things or the best things that have happened this year, the worst things that have happened, both locally and globally. I'll give it a shot, and then you can elaborate. So if we think about globally, there's one thing that I really liked, and this is the first gene editing product for sickle cell disease approved by the FDA. This is gene editing. This is the next wave of pharmaceutical products. So this happened a couple of months ago by Vertex and CRISPR Therapeutics, which is a Swiss-US company. So this is, for me, really seeing, the rewards of investing in science, because as a top pharma executive said once, it's very easy to transform money into science, but very hard to transform science into money. Okay. And this is a good example of being perseverant and then ultimately getting this gene editing approved. Now, here locally, and I don't want to do any publicity, but there's two things that have happened this year, 2023, that are meaningful for Catalonia. I think one is having here a big hub of a large pharmaceutical company betting in Catalonia. This is really, really, really good news. And they're serious because they're going to recruit a lot of people. The other one is Almirall got their first biologic approved for atopic dermatitis in November. So this is also a very important step in the industry here to get a biological approved for a very large indication. We will talk later about what areas of therapeutic areas are of interest to pharmas, but clearly atopic dermatitis is one of them.
I fully agree. I think that we are going to see in the next months and years disruptive technologies that have been cooking in the portfolios of VCs around the world, getting into patients and getting into the market, which is something that we have already listened before in the roundtable on advanced therapies, and that was rocket science a few years ago, and that's a reality, which is super good. Just to close on the 2023 and just focusing on venture capital, again, I think that all VCs around the world have been focusing in their own portfolios with the idea to try to avoid going out and fundraise with new investors just to avoid the corrections or the decreases in valuations. So everybody was trying to get these reserves and this money to keep on supporting their own portfolio companies, at least those that were worth it. And the few things, again, thinking about globally, what we have seen as trends in US and Europe, if VCs, if venture capitalists were doing new investments, that was small pieces of investment in early stage companies, which is something that you still need to have time to get matured, right? But VCs have raised a lot of money in the last years.
I think for early stage companies, I think we should not be worried about getting these companies capitalized because there's enough capital around. The companies that are struggling more are actually those that are in Series B, C, that are more mature, that require larger amount of capital. And then the valuation of those companies with the correction that we're seeing in the public markets is the issue. So if you have a company that needs to raise 50 to 100 million and has several rounds of financing behind his back, to find investors accepting the valuation, it's tough. Whereas for early stage investments, I think there's plenty of opportunities. And one thing we have good here is rock solid science, high performing science. So it's a matter of putting this science to work in companies and getting early stage investments done.
Correct. So I think that overall we are happy that 2023 is over somehow, right? But we start 2024 with the best of the tools, not only globally, but particularly in Catalonia. Good science, an increasing number of investors that hopefully we all together we are going to be able to also continue attracting international investors to come and invest in our Catalan-based biotech, medtech, and digital health companies. So I think that's tools and gasoline to continue and to do even a better job in 2024. So if I have to, we were predicting that, right? What are we going to see in 2024 in terms of M&A, IPOs, investments? So I think that's a clear trend of opening. The rally has started. Everybody is there. No one wants to miss the opportunity to take advantage of these good valuations, at least in the public companies. But also that will push pharmas one to the other, medtechs one to the other, digital corporations one to the other, to compete to get the best deals, and that would at some point do a kind of a hype. In venture capital, the same. The money is there. There are big funds in Europe, particularly also in the US, that have raised huge amounts of money in the last years, and they were, if you allow me, sitting in their money for a while now they have to put this money at work, and they will be in it. So there will be some competition here And also, I think Catalonia should not be an exception, right? So we will be seeing investments being done here, funds having money, and hopefully next year numbers will be different.
Yeah. We have to be cautious, because venture capital also relies on investors, meaning pension funds, insurance companies, sophisticated asset managers, and we need to also raise that money. The challenge has been, with the interest rates, how they have been now seems to go down a bit, but this is very challenging because you have low risk assets with a significant return. So the alternative investments, meaning private equity and venture capital, need to deliver returns for investors and be competitive with respect to the current environment. So 2023 has been a challenge in that respect. I would say even also the last few years. If things start to change in the sense that interest rates go down again, I think the limited partners, the so-called investors of funds, will have more appetite, clearly focusing also on performance, but will have more appetite for alternative investments.
So things, I think in conclusion, things are going to improve, at least globally, hopefully also here. But probably the question is at what speed, right? So, and that will depend a lot also on external effects and external things about regulation in terms of interest rates, inflation, and things like that.
Yeah, and uncertainty. I mean, the geopolitical circumstances that we have are not helping, yes. Particularly the new, what happened this year in the region of the Middle East. That's yet another element of uncertainty, and investors don't like that. So you have to fight against that as well.
Correct, and probably sometimes people like Joël and myself and all the VCs and other investors that try to invest in life sciences and capture this attention of the investors that invest in us. Now, sometimes people ask us, are you competing with other verticals that are now a kind of a trend? I don't know, climate change, many other things. And the answer is yes. So I think that sometimes there are waves and trends, and now we see lots of LPs, lots of investors that prefer, they say, we are investing in impact, or we are investing in things that will change humanity. And I think that we need to continue in launching and giving the message that investing in life sciences, investing in health of people, investing in young kids' health, in adults' health, in their earliest health is somehow an impact way or a way to invest, to impact positively in everyone's lives. And as a society, we deserve to do so, right? So I think that all the economy-driven aspects of our sector sometimes doesn't allow to see that behind this economic tractor and effort, there is also products that reach patients, that save lives or improve lives. And I think that we need to keep on giving that message all across, because that has been the case. But I think we have some investors that really believe in the segment, and we are now a kind of a category where every big LP is going to put part of its money. We just try to make sure that this needs to be big or big enough to.
And this is a chain, actually, and we'll talk about what therapeutic areas are of interest, where the most unmet needs lie, what modalities are coming up, and this is the differentiation you were talking about. When you go to an investor and say, "Well, I'm going to invest in this, this, and this," the question is why? Well, A, because there's an unmet medical need. And B, this unmet medical need correlates with interest of pharmaceutical industry. So this is very important when you invest, because ultimately you need to mature these companies and then provide optionalities, going to the stock market or partnering with a large pharmaceutical company. But there needs to be a driving force, and this driving force comes with unmet needs and therapeutic areas that are of high interest.
I think that this changed a little bit, right? So I think the impact we had in 2023, and one of the things that will translate into 2024 is the fact that investors and everyone is a little bit more, the threshold to make a decision to invest is a little bit higher. So I don't think we are ready anymore to invest in incremental innovation. I think that we are going to bet into really disruptive science. Venture capital has done that as a mandate forever, right? But I think that we are going to go even to the next step, and even public markets are a little bit pointing out towards this. So I think that making sure that this innovation achieves everyone, but arrives to everyone and is deployed, but also that what we are betting on, particularly from venture capital, is things that will dramatically change the way that patients go and the outcomes of those patients. And you were mentioning gene editing, so I think that's one of the examples of things like that. In the cardiovascular space, sometimes people ask us, where are you going to invest? No? What are the things that you like most? I think that sometimes we just invest also depending on the eagerness of pharma and corporates in digital, in medtech, in the different segments, but also regulations, for example. And here we were having a debate on advanced therapies that impacts a lot the decisions of investing in one area or another. In the cardiovascular space, for example, the FDA has changed regulations last year or 18 months ago, changing the way that the clinical impact of in certain cardiovascular areas, you had to show overall survival improvement to get a drug approved. Now there are biomarkers and other ways to show clinical benefit, and you have seen lots of VCs entering into the space just because it has been attractive, right? But in other spaces. I think cancer is still a must. We've seen the ADCs hype these last years, and that was clearly at ESMO, probably in Barcelona at the end of the year. We will continue seeing additional clinical data in ADCs, in oncology, but also neurology and other areas that
I would say, we're seeing a transformative change in the way we treat, I would say, the most important epidemic in the Western world, which is obesity.
Correct.
Now, obesity is linked to cardiovascular diseases, to cancer, and it's a real burden for the healthcare system worldwide, and also on the quality of life of these patients that suffer obesity. Now, it's in the news, but we've seen the emergence of the GLP-1 agonist, Ozempic, Mounjaro. These are drugs that are making a difference and addressing this unmet need. But very importantly, and I don't think people realize, there's a very recent clinical trial, large clinical trial, where they show that these drugs they have a 20% improvement in survival for whatever reason.
Correct.
It's not just cardiovascular, it's not just obesity, it's for whatever reason, overall survival. And this is really very, very meaningful. So these drugs should not be seen as, part of cosmetics. They are going to make a huge impact. And if you look at the number of patients treated, just look at the sales of these drugs, 23 billion just last year, 23 billion. And this correlates with the amount of patients. So this is going to be, highly transformative for the society, I would say. And again, thinking about investing in science, GLP-1 agonists were discovered in 2005, so almost 20 years ago. Now they're reaching this status of blockbuster and serving a real unmet need. So again, an example of perseverance in science pays off ultimately, if it makes a difference, obviously.
I think that this is an example of what we have seen in the trends of really impacting patients. So when you speak or discuss about prevention, right? Prevention, no one is going to invest in prevention. Well, that's part of prevention. This is a treatment. So what had to happen for these drugs to arrive is that someone was able in the regulatory space to assume that obesity was a disease due to all the concomitancies that then happen. So when you have an indication that is obesity and then you have a treatment for that, then you are somehow preventing all the outcomes of this kind of thing. So it's not only about treating something in its very end, it's about improving the health of society as much as we can. And of course, there are many question marks around it. Access, will these drugs really arrive and be deployed to everyone In the US, there's a huge nightmare in payers, regulators, etc., on how are we going to deploy these drugs, because even in the manufacturing, it's super challenging. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have already said they probably will not have facilities to manufacture all these things. So there's the additional challenges there. But of course, who made these investors 20 years ago, these investments 20, 15 years ago, was someone having a very good view here.
You mentioned before ADCs. I don't know if everybody knows what an ADC is. It's an antibody drug conjugate, which is basically, in simple words, directed chemotherapy. Now, again, looking into the future, there's a huge hype in ADC modality with a number of products approved now, working very well, in particular in breast cancer. There's pharma companies licensing technology from ADC from China, never heard before, so keep an eye on China. But now you even see these therapies being first line. The session we were talking about first, second, third line. Well, chemotherapy is in cancer is always the first line. Well, in bladder cancer, ADCs are already first line. And I'm pretty convinced that in 5-10 years' time, all the first lines in cancer using ADC as a modality will be first line. Chemotherapy will slowly fade away because this is, it's working and it's chemotherapy, really directed chemotherapy. And you start to see this huge impact now in cancer as well. So yet again, this is cancer, but specifically in a modality, how to treat cancer. And there's a lot of opportunity still because there's many different targets for different cancers. So this will evolve in the next decade for sure.
So this has also increased the threshold. We want to see cures. We want to see sustained remissions of cancers and other diseases. So I think the threshold is higher and higher every time.
This is what markets value.
Correct.
I mean, really, medicines that make a difference and that work well. Not that just extend the progression-free survival for a few months and then you get an approval. That's not sustainable for the healthcare system.
And let me comment briefly also on what the digital health will have to do in all these kind of things, right? So digital health, we've seen that as investors as a pure modality. So we are investing in companies that develop digital tools to treat patients or as companions. But this is there. And obesity or even cancer is an example. So when you are able to bring a tool that helps that patient or those physicians to keep on track on their therapy, to take care of the secondary effects, to make the most of those therapies, the way you can reimburse, the monitoring the payers can do about it, but also the very end outcome of that patient where you have a companion tool that helps you not only monitoring but improving adherence and many other things is huge. And this is something we are going to see more and more. COVID, the pandemic, helped a lot in things happening that we have never seen, such as physicians having medical visits over the phone with patients, right? So these systems are changing. As every trend, it seems to go back and forward. I think that we are all learning in the digital space, entrepreneurs, scientists, investors, corporates. It's not easy. This is a change of paradigm. And what we are started seeing in 2023, and we will continue seeing in 2024, is probably a consolidation of the market. So at this point, we as investors are considering, well, of the companies we have in our portfolio, which are the companies that can be transformed into consolidators, those ones that will be the basis to plug and play for other apps and other digital tools? Or is that company one of those that can be a nice tool to be consolidated into a much more transversal platform? And I think that's a little bit what we are going to see in the digital space in that sense. But I think that some of the outcomes and the clinical trials that are being conducted in pure digital tools and the readouts of this data is impressive. So more to come in 2024 on the digital space.
Well, talking about digital.
I don't think we can finish this session today without speaking about AI and generative AI.
Generative AI. I mean, this is like internet, the impact that the internet did 30 years ago, and then we're going to see the same thing again, but now with generative AI. And there's a lot of examples. Google's DeepMind developed AlphaFold. AlphaFold is a technology to predict 3D structures of proteins that before you needed a huge computational power of years to predict the 3D structure of a protein. Now it's something that can be done with this. Also to understand the biology, correlating a lot of data out there and gathering all that data and understanding the biology. So this is going to transform the biotech industry and the biopharmaceutical industry dramatically. We're in the early days, but this is going to transform dramatically the industry.
I think it will change dramatically the way we all do our jobs, probably. So the way we write emails, it's already happening, right? But it's not only impacting life sciences, it's all over the place. But I think that particularly life sciences and trying to be more efficient, and then let me link that with the investors. So I think that one of the messages we always give to our companies is let's try to be efficient. And efficiency is one of the things we can claim from Europe and even from Catalonia. We are super efficient in using money into our biotechs compared to other regions of the world. So I think that any tool, including generative AI or basic AI, that helps us in predicting, in implementing, in being more efficient, in not having to do 10 experiments if we can predict what happens in 3, I think that's a little bit what we are eager to see in our companies too, and no one can be close to that, right?
No, and another example, check this out in Google, it's protein hallucination. Protein hallucination. This is a new technology for generating completely novel proteins that do not exist in nature, okay? Just completely novel proteins. And this is coming up, this is again something, a completely new terrain that is coming up and will have an impact in the pharmaceutical industry as well. And then in the other AI, I was talking to an executive of pharma, and he was saying, before we used to have 30 people during 3 months doing all the budget of next year. Now we do it in 3 weeks with 3 people, thanks to AI. One example. But this is more operational. This is more from an efficiency perspective. But again, it has also its impact. But another one, which was very interesting, is when in cardiovascular, somebody needs to do a large outcome trial with thousands of patients that cost a whole lot of money. How did it work before? You had all the clinical development team presenting to the executive board, this is the reason why we want to invest 500 million in this phase 3 with 10,000 patients, okay? And who were the judges? The executive board. And they needed to challenge. Now it doesn't work that way. AI collects intra-company all the information, past statistics, past failures, how many patients you recruit, how long will it take, all of that conundrum, and they need to defend against the verdict of AI. And then the ultimate decision body is, of course, the executive team, but it works differently now. And this is, again, from an operational perspective, it's quite impressive. But I would say the AI has 2 buckets, more in the research discovery, novel technologies, novel proteins, that's one thing, and then more on the operational side.
Correct. And also getting data everywhere. Now that we are able to use this data much more efficiently, to apply it real time and to make decisions quick and smarter decisions, I think we cannot be, any of us, out of this trend, out of this challenge. So we'll do our best from the venture capital perspective too. So I think we are running out of time.
It has been a pleasure, Clara.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, everyone.
Hope you enjoyed it.